Hello, everyone. This is Lars. We're just going to try and test something up real quick to try and make sure that we can address any questions that people have. So I have so Noah and Calabro. Can you guys do me a favor? As hosts, we can't see that you can kind of raise your hand somehow through Zoom. Can you guys practice doing that for me right now? So no, I'm not on your video, silly rabbit. As part of the Zoom feature. Okay, so Max, I see it. Okay, so right now we're going to try this. So Max, I'm going to unmute. Hi, Max, can you hear me?
I can, SideWall Jedi.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So for everybody who is in the chat, I'm going to start in about a minute. But as you can see, you have, as a host, I can't see it on my screen, but you have the feature to raise your hand. And so once we as I'm going along, once we get to kind of the end of my presentation about pocket placement, I'm going to ask for people to, if you have questions, raise your hand, and I can scroll over to the participants, and I will unmute. People as we go along to just go through the questions and answer the questions that people have. Okay, it's 3:30. Ted, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being able to start this off for us and also help kind of moderate and do a lot of the behind the scenes work to help presentations like these, and obviously so much more that you do for Harvard's men's lacrosse. For everyone, if anyone doesn't already know, my name is Lars Keil. I am the Director of Lacrosse Operations for Harvard Men's Lacrosse. It is absolutely an honor to get to work with these guys and work with a tremendous group of young men every day. A way to kind of get in touch with me and a little bit more about me, in addition to being the Director of Ops, I also run my own business and have my own website, and it's SideWallJedi.com. My Instagram handle is @SideWallJedi. And for anyone who's interested, the email address is lars@sidewalljedi.com. So today we are going to talk about pocket placement. Now, what is that, and how does it reflect, and how is it important to everybody? Youth players, high school players, college players, professional players. It's not something that a lot of people talk about, but it is something that affects everybody. Pocket placement, generally speaking, is where the ball, like the shape of the pocket, and where the ball wants to sit when the ball is in the pocket during play. It sounds kind of simple, but it can be really complicated. But for everybody that doesn't know about stringing, you don't have to worry about it. You just have to understand what it is, and hopefully that's what I'm going to address today. There are varying degrees, of course, but generally pockets fall into one of three categories: high pockets, mid pockets, and low pockets. Each has their own advantages and disadvantages. And the more you understand why certain people in certain positions should use certain kinds of pockets, the more you will be able to take advantage of higher levels of performance in yourself or your players, regardless of the level. So a couple advantages of sticks that I have done that illustrate and are good for these, that are good illustrations of this. Here is a good example of a high pocket. It's not irresponsibly high. The ball isn't sitting up underneath the plastic itself, but generally speaking, the ball is going to want to sit when cradled. Like the way that I have strung this, and all the sticks you see behind me and the other ones I'm going to show you are all sticks that I have done myself. The ball wants to sit up here, up at the top of the pocket. So that's where the ball is going to sit in an iteration like this. These three examples that I'm about to show you have no shooting strings. They probably would in the event that I gave them to a player, but I'm using ones that don't have shooting strings to kind of better illustrate pocket shape. Here is another example. This is a little bit more of something that is a mid pocket. Now you notice, if I'm putting my hand in the pocket, I'm just dragging my fingers out the back of it. You notice the ball wants to sit a little bit more in the middle, hence mid pocket. There's the mesh about 2 inches underneath the plastic. There's a little bit more tension there, and there's a little bit less mesh used down at the bottom. So if I had the ball here, and I went just like with the high pocket, if I had the ball in the pocket and I rolled it up like this, that ball is going to pop right out. And it's not The ball is not going to sit in the pocket easily. Last but not least is something that's a little bit more of a low pocket. This is going to have the ball, generally speaking, the ball is going to sit a little bit lower and it's not going to come out. Your low pockets, and I'll get a little more into positionally why some pockets work better for different positions. This ball is going to sit in the pocket a little bit more when you're cradling with your stick kind of straight up and down. Now, why is it important? Now, I'm not going to get too much in depth with specific stringing, but think of the top string, which is what along the scoop, the piece of string itself that connects the mesh up to the scoop. Your top string is your foundation. As long as that's symmetrical and it's tight, then you can do a lot of fun things with the rest of the pocket. As long as the top string is tight, then your sidewalls dictate shape. Shape dictates release. Each one of these sticks, if one individual person picked up each one of these sticks and tried to throw with it, each of them are going to throw differently for that one person. And the same if you change people. Depending upon that player's position and the style in which they like to play, one of these three sticks may be better suited to that individual person. One of these, it might be better suited for them, but also one of these pockets will also significantly aid a player in how they want to play. The release, how each of these three release will alter as well, and that goes along with how that they want to play. But we're also getting into like physical mechanics. You might have two people that might play a similar style of game that have distinctly different mechanics. You could have two people that shoot really hard, but if one of them likes taking certain kinds of shots and another one likes to take different kinds of shots, one stick, both of they may not want to use the same exact stick. So there is a lot of variance even amongst different similar styles. And so I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty of that, but we need to discuss some of it. I touched upon it a second ago. What is play style? So there's one of the most amazing and fantastic things about this game, and it's one of the things that I'm so passionate about with stringing specifically, is lacrosse is unique amongst just about every sport that you can be played, that's played professionally and played around the world. I don't know of another sport that the implement with which you play the sport varies not only so much from person to person, but also position to position. Some of the things that I touched upon a second ago. You can have players that are that play the same position that have vastly different sticks and vastly different play styles. You can have your feeding attackmen who use something like a low pocket and they're dodging and they're running with their stick straight up and down, with the ball sitting in the bottom of their stick. And then you can also have your attackmen who who sit on the wing and they're all about power shooting, and they want to have like a mid pocket with a lot of shooters and a lot of hold in their stick so the ball stays in long enough so they can shoot really hard. Simultaneously, you could have another attackman that sits on the crease and that just wants to get the ball in and out of his stick. He doesn't want a low pocket, doesn't want a mid pocket, holds onto the ball. He might want something that's a little higher that would be good also for different positions. So this sport is so incredible, and it's so unique among the pantheon of sport because of the implement with which we play. So like I mentioned, you've got your feeding attackmen that might use something. If they're running and they're most of the time that's their stick is straight up and down in one hand, they're likely to use something that has the ball, that keeps the ball down low and is easy to sit down low. You might have an LSM who loves playing off the ground, who's incredible on ground balls. They're typically going to need something that the pocket is a little bit higher and there's a little bit more room. The mesh is not as tight up near the top of the pocket because they want to get the ball into the pocket. Like they want to grab the ball somewhere around here and have it go to where it wants to be as quickly as possible. Whereas using something like this, there's not a lot of room. The ball might mess around up here or might float around, and it's literally longer for the ball to get down to the bottom, and it's just not as easy to pick up and control ground balls. Same thing as I mentioned with if you've got people who like to shoot really hard, you might want uh, a pocket that has a little bit more of a little bit more hole. It's a little bit tighter up the top where it's deep in the middle and the ball's going to stay in there longer and it'd be more difficult to throw with because you want it to stay in the pocket so you can shoot harder. Um, who needs to know this stuff and when? Also very important. Uh, the correct answer is everyone, but it varies for age and ability and skill level. Uh, for the younger ages, for youth players in the first few years that really don't know exactly what style they really kind of want to play in moving forward in their career, it's more important than they have something that is easy to throw with than something that's very specific to they want to play that way. Uh, Generally, if someone contacts me or sends me an email says, "Hey, I'd like to buy a stick from you. I'd like you to restring a stick that I already have." As I had mentioned I think it was last week, and the last time I spoke, in these presentations, I asked questions like, "How old are they? What is their skill level? What position are they?" And I'm going to take that stuff into consideration. But if someone says, "Hey, this is the second spring that my son is 8. He plays this. He likes to do this, and this." If I hear that he's 8 years old and it's his second year playing lacrosse, I'm going to give him something that's relatively generic. If he wants a really high pocket, I might give him that, but it's going to be very, very, very simple and easy for that young man to use. Because it's more important that that guy can just cradle with two hands and catch and throw than give him like exactly the style that he wants. As players start, playing for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they start getting into high school. They're going to start developing. They're probably going to be slotted into one specific position. There's at the younger ages, I think it's incredibly important that kids are playing every position. I think everyone at the younger ages should play goalie. They should play attack, midfield. They should play defense. They should understand how to play lacrosse more so than specialize in one specific position. This is how I feel. But as they're starting getting into high school and the higher levels of club, preparing to play in college, it's kind of a natural progression. They're going to start figuring out, like they're going to start having refinements in their mechanics, and they will start to figure out kind of, okay, maybe I want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. There are also going to be those players that just don't understand, they don't know. And they're just going to find something that works for them on that day, and they might kind of like that, and they might stick to that. But if they understood the importance of this, they might be like, hey, I wonder if something will work better for me. Then we can start to open up whole new avenues of performance that they had not really understood just yet. Now, nice segue into, do many players play with the wrong or non-optimal pocket shapes? Absolutely, yes. I have seen over the years in recruiting, like I'm the coach. If I'm walking by, walking behind the benches of two club teams playing at a club tournament or something like that, I'm looking at everybody's stick. I'm looking at the sticks that the guys have in their hands. I'm looking at the sticks that are on the sidelines, just because I want to know, is someone using a stick that obviously they care about and they're taking care of, or if they're using something that it looks like it has not been washed since the first time it was strung 2 years ago. That's going to give me insight, me personally, into that player, whether they care, how much they care about their equipment, how much they care about performance. Certainly not the be all end all of how I'm going to make decisions about someone if I'm looking at them from a recruiting standpoint. But for me, because I know what I'm looking at, I find it important and I take it into consideration. But I will say there are young players there are young players. There are players in high school. There are players in college. And even the last few years that I've spent as an assistant coach and the equipment manager for the Boston Cannons in the MLL, I've been able to show these are professional players, guys who have been playing in the professional leagues, whether it be indoor and outdoor, guys who play in the NLL right now in the winter and they play outdoor in the summer. There are guys that they've always had something that works and they've never really thought about, hey, can I use something that will increase my ability to perform on the field? And it's not always often, but there's certainly, every year I've had a couple of guys who I was blown away by the fact that they had no idea about pocket shapes and what something that might be able to work better for them. And a lot of the cases, a number of the cases were defensemen who didn't understand that they could have, they're playing with a mid pocket. It might not be as easy to pick up ground balls. And I said, okay, I can give you something that the ball's going to hold up a little bit higher. It's going to be easier for ground balls, that you can still have the hold and the whip or whatever you think that means to be able to throw and catch, but it's easier for you in different situations. And then I give them something to try at practice, and their mind's blown, and they don't know. Then they start asking questions, and then I get all excited because we have long conversations about it. Are there any other factors that dictate what might add to wrong and non-optimal pocket shape use? I've seen a lot of younger players who think they know what their play style is, and they're trying to emulate a player that they admire. And so, like, oh, I want one of these pockets, or I want these pockets. So in the past, I've had young boys who have said, like, oh, you used to string for this team. Can you give me a stick like that you strung for that guy? And often I can, because a lot of the time the sticks that I'm stringing for really high-level players, whether they're pros or whether they're other guys in college who are playing at a high level and succeeding, a lot of the times the sticks that I'm giving to them, I feel comfortable giving to younger players because I know that stick is easy to throw with. And there are the rare occasions where I've had guys say, "Hey, can you give me this this young man's stick?" Doc Sakin, the exceptional midfielder from University of Virginia, is a guy who I had met a number of years ago and have done a number of sticks for. And when kids who are 12 or 13 years old in middle school or early in high school, and they're asking me, "Hey, can you string me a stick like Doc's?" I say respectfully, no, I can't. He's an exceptional young man who has an exceptional level of skill, and I'll get into skill in a moment. And I wouldn't feel right giving a kid a stick that's going to go straight into the ground. Docs has been able to figure out how to use a stick that he can absolutely hammer the ball with and be very skillful. So he has gotten to the point where he can use a stick that others would find very difficult. So it's one of those other factors that leads into it. There's another thing that, if you notice, a lot of you out there have seen, probably most of you don't see people using wax mesh anymore. This was the bane of my existence for many years, because lots of young kids and stringers were like, "Hey, this is great. You can have more hold than you can possibly imagine. And you can do all these fakes and all these fun stick tricks and sky whammies, and you could golf swing the ball and the ball's not going to come out." And people were like, "Oh, I can have more hold than I have ever dreamed of." Yet no one ever said that no one realized that they wouldn't be able to throw the ball, like literally for a 10-yard pass with ease. And I don't work for any of the mesh manufacturers, so I don't know whether or not this is true, but my interpretation of it is wax mesh literally just canceled itself out. People stopped using it because people like myself said, "You can't throw with that. Like, you are going to hinder." Like, I want to support young men while they're at the recruiting camps, and young women when they're at, well, young women don't use young ladies aren't using wax mesh in their sticks, but for young men who were, I would say, like, "Hey, like, your stick is holding you back from being able to perform your job and literally throw passes. You're not trying to throw passes to people's knees when you're aiming over their head." So thankfully, wax mesh is no longer a big thing. The stringing has a lot to do with it, and so that's what I had talked about last week. It's really important for players and coaches to know who's stringing stick. Like, for players, get somebody. If you don't string yourself, find somebody who can do a good job for you. Coaches, if you find somebody who does a good job stringing sticks, try and connect that person with your players, or vice versa, because it never ceases to blow my mind how giving someone a stick that's easy to throw with can ignite a passion in being able to play this game, because so often kids are getting store-bought sticks and just expecting it to work, because most of the time that's how it works. You go get a tennis racket that's already strung. You go get golf clubs from like Dick's Sporting Goods. If you go buy a basketball and basketball shoes, it's not the basketball or the basketball shoes if you're not very good. Whereas you can be a pretty decent player and you can go buy a brand new head off the wall at Dick's and be like, "Oh man, it's the most expensive head. It's awesome." If it's not strung well, it will not work. So that has a lot to do with it. I had mentioned a moment ago skill. Skill kind of can trump some of the issues that you've had with that players of any level have with sticks. A couple of there's 4 people that I can think of off the top of my head: Gary Gate, Casey Powell, Lyle Thompson, and John Grant Jr. These are 4 like just absolute true icons that have had unprecedented success both at the indoor and the outdoor level, indoor and outdoor professional level, I should say that as well. These guys, if you go and you see the things, you ever watch highlights on any of these players, it's like it's difficult to understand how they are able to do all the things that they can do with a lacrosse stick in their hands. But what would be even more surprising to so many people is if they actually got their stick in their hand and put their hand, they put the hand through the back of those 4 guys' sticks. What would amaze people the most is, oh, how do you do all those fakes and all those things that you do with the stick that is so doesn't have as much hold or whip or any of these other things that you would think it is have, because they can do it. And it comes down to the fact that they're that good. I feel extremely confident that any of those, like Gary Gate, Casey Powell, Lyle Thompson, and John Grant Jr., they could pick up any of these 3 sticks that I strung in the last week, go get on the wall for 5 minutes, and then go play professionally a game, because they are so good that the stick what they're using doesn't matter. If they're using something that they really like, that will help them. But they operate at a different level up here. They have the physical abilities to do everything that they need. And so they just need a stick that is good enough, because they have outskilled what they need for a stick. Mesh plays a lot of it. Mesh matters. There's a lot of great meshes that are out there right now. STX makes really good mesh. String King makes good mesh. East Coast Dyes makes good mesh. The Mesh Dynasty is a fantastic, fantastic new company on the scene that has the best color on the market by 1,000 miles. So that is generally a lot of that. That's what comes down to a lot of the pocket placement issues. The pocket placement is very important. Shooting strings, I didn't really talk about shooting strings very much. I'll touch upon it for a second. As I had mentioned in the beginning, how you string the sidewalls of your stick. This is the red on this side and blue on this side. How you string your sidewalls dictates, sidewalls dictate shape. Shape dictates release. Shooting strings augment shape. I want a pocket to, I want the shape of the pocket with no shooters to do 85 to 90% of all the work that a stick needs to do and that a pocket placement needs to do. Nathan, thank you for raising your hand. I'll be there in 1 second. I want that last 10 or 15% of augmenting and changing the shape to be done by the shooters. Shooters are for literally shooting and for allowing you to super fine tune release timing, how early or how late the ball comes out, and then to modify feel. Feel being like the click. If you there's some sticks, I'm sure everyone in this room is probably thrown with a stick that they literally don't even feel the ball coming out here. And then guys have had sticks where it's really loose up underneath the plastic, and they actually have to alter their mechanics and stop their hand because the ball thunks off the plastic itself. So I call it click. I describe it as feel. People, when I ask them questions about it, I say, how do you like to feel the ball coming out? And they're like, typically, after a couple questions, we can say, okay, they like a little bit of click or no click. And I can easily adjust what I'm using for shooters, whether it be nylons, shooting strings, and varying shapes of those. In college, obviously, we can't use, everything has to be under 4 inches of plastic. But within that, there's still a lot of ways that you can kind of mess around with how you want the ball to come out. Okay, 353. Just as I had said at the very beginning, if anybody that is still present, if you have any questions, do the little raise your hand feature in Zoom, and I will unmute you so you can answer the question. Everyone can hear, and then I will answer it. So anyone who's still here, like there's the little, somewhere it sees, okay, Nathan, here we go. Nathan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
I have a question about face-off heads.
Yes, sir. Fire away.
So for face-off guys, do you have is it necessary for them to have high pocket, mid pocket, or low pocket, or is it just like personal preference? Because like after it bends, like it mostly goes down as as the plastic bends.
This is a very important question that I have talked a lot about with the other people that, thank you very much, Nathan, for your question. The question, if anyone didn't hear, is what about face-off heads? Is it still personal preference? What's important about it? That is, some of it comes down to how they like to play, but the bottom line is the way that the rules are set up right now, you cannot carry the ball in the back of your stick. You have to get it, you have to pop it out of the back of your stick right away. And then if you can't, whether you can or you can't throw with the stick that you're facing off with, that's up to the face-off guy. I personally believe that, the two of the people that need the best skills on the team, the best stick handling skills on the team, I think are, one, the goalie, far and away is number one, and two, your face-off guy. And this is more so than even some of your best attackman and your best midfielder, because one, the goalie, he's got to clear the ball. He needs to be awesome at it, or else you are not going to find the success that you want. And two, your face-off guy, because he has to deal with being able to throw with a stick that's bent all to hell. So especially if it's a hot day and a guy's gone out there, he's taken 30 face-offs, or really high scoring games, say 20 to 30 face-offs, and the head is weak, it's bent all, like it's tough to get the ball out. You see guys, they'll put the softball in the back of the stick in here so that it keeps the plastic stretched out. They need to be able to throw. They pop it out of their stick. If the ball's in the stick, you cannot touch your head. Whistle, going the other way. It's a violation. So they have to be able to pop it into the front part of their stick and throw even when the stick is all over the place. So generally, I don't string sticks for face-off guys where the pocket is very low and there's not a lot of area where the ball can sit up here. I generally give face-off guys mid to mid-high pockets, because even when, like, the higher the pocket is and the more loose some of this mesh is up here, the more easier it is for the ball to still sit in the pocket and be able to come out when the head is bent before easier for the ball to come out of the stick while the head is bent before the face-off guy makes his first pass. And if you are a face-off guy who has, if you have good skill and you have a stick that you can throw with and the ball is in it, especially if you have an understanding of how to play offense, it opens up opportunities for an offense. And I'm sure it's the kind of thing that our coaches will talk about if they haven't already. They can talk about it in in future meetings like this. I was an assistant coach at Brown in 2016 when the Brown team went all the way to the Final Four. Our face-off guy, who was, I'm biased, I'm going to argue that he was the best in the country that year. He was a second-team All-American. But he knew how to play offense. And he wasn't necessarily a scorer. He scored a few goals that year off of fast breaks. But he would win the face-off, keep the other team's face-off guy on the field. And they would marry and they'd stay right together. He would carry the ball around the wing through X. And then he'd go throw the ball to the Tewaaraton winner of that year, Dylan Malloy. And then he was really good at setting picks. So all of a sudden, he would set a great pick on Dylan Malloy's defenseman, and now they would switch, and Dylan Malloy is dodging against the other team's face-off guy. I think if anybody remembers Dylan Malloy, we understand how that went. More questions? Anyone else has any questions left? We got time for one, maybe two more. Please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Nathan, hopefully I answered your question. If you have any more, I will tell you how to continue to ask questions as we go along. Anyone has any more questions for me talking about sticks or pocket placement, please let me know. Going once. Going twice. Okay, thank you, everyone. Obviously, we're sticking around. I'm going to be off here in a second, and I believe Coach Hutch is going to be coming up right behind me. But if anyone does have any questions that they didn't necessarily want to ask here during the Zoom meeting, again, my email is lars@sidewalljedi.com. I am very passionate about stringing and sticks and how important it is to the success of our team here at Harvard. and anyone else that I get the chance to talk about this stuff with. So if you have any questions, please, you can hit me up on Instagram. It's at SideWall Jedi on Instagram, or like I said, my email is lars@sidewalljedi.com. I'm happy to answer any and all questions that anyone has. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you everyone for tuning in.